For the government to confiscate 100 million firearms in this country is damn near impossible. To suggest that the government has the resources and the manpower to confiscate 424 million firearms in this country, that's just the ones they think they know about, is pure fucking hubris. And even to suggest that you could get law enforcement out there going door to door to have citizens voluntarily hand over weapons is astounding. You can't, it's impossible. It's not possible. However, given that the government has a lot of time and resources to ponder this idea, to even suggest the confiscation of 424 million firearms, to me it's impossible. But knowing how the government is, they'll think about it and they'll develop and research and focus group a way to confiscate firearms. Now, they can't necessarily do it. They can do it in, let's say, blue states where most of that population is pliable and they don't really care. And a lot of the homes, they may have a firearm or two, like a 32 caliber, 8-shooter or 8-round revolver somewhere tucked away that the grandfather had back in 1920. They'll give that up because it doesn't affect them. They'll just call the police after, their wife has been, ravaged by roving bands of, ruffians and highwaymen. They would do that. They just don't care. They'll call them, make up some sub-story, whatever. The police didn't get there on time. Blame the cop or whatever. The problem is the red states and red counties. And I don't think there's any red cities really technically, but let's just say that is their plan to do. It would take at least, like 1 billion people, law enforcement, to do that. They couldn't do it. The focus of this video is what do you think the government is trying to, let's say, conjure up for you to voluntarily hand over your firearms? Well, let's just focus on one specific area, the economy. Now, I know what you're going to say out there in the lads of land. What do you mean, the economy? Well, if the economy tanks, okay, and the government goes, this is a great way to confiscate firearms, but not going out there door to door to do it, you would have people voluntarily showing up at food distribution points and saying, hey, you want a bucket of food or a month set of food? Give us one firearm. And some people will gladly fucking do it. Hand over firearms for food to feed their family. Those are necessarily the weak people. You may be able to, let's say, you could suggest that, or even hypothesize that these people would, I'd say around about 90 million people. Let's say in this country, you could possibly have 90 million people give up their firearms voluntarily to receive food in return, or a cash sum of X amount of dollars. For, let's say, you have a Glock 9mm, might be, 3 days worth of food, 500 rounds of 9mm, probably, say, a week's worth of food. You get my point is. That's how you could necessarily do it. If the economy tanks and food's a problem, baby formula, anyone, you could see where the government says, hey, you can have a firearm, but, we have all this food out there and we really care about your protection and safety. So if you want to receive food from the government, which try to go to the stores out there, there's no food. Theoretically, in a position to where the country's in, to where there's mass food riots and people are going insane. Government out there is using, jackbooted, thug tactics to quell insurrections or, food riots. You could see that, where they would voluntarily hand over their weapons. But that still leaves about, 200 and something million weapons out there. Free floating. you could see where this could go. As food riots and food becomes more scarce, you could see the government go, look, we'll give you even more food. Hey, by the way, if you know your neighbor has those weapons that, they're not illegal, but they're scary, let us know. And if you snitch on your neighbor and they find, for every weapon we find, we'll give you a month's worth of food. The snitches are going to come out of the woodwork. I guess that's my whole plot to this whole scenario that I have, this thought experiment out there, that how do you think the government will confiscate firearms in an involuntary way where they just sit back passively while you bring your firearms to people, okay, that will necessarily, because they're scared, they're hungry, and they got a family of 4, they just have to do it because, that right there, folks, is one of many scenarios that you can come across or think about, because that is exactly what they want to do. Now, how would they go about manufacturing a food riot or food shortages? Well, look at the fuel shortages going on. They just stop producing or stop leases on oil sites, offshore drilling, oil sands. They just stop you from doing it. Or stop selling those leases and canceling leases. And so therefore the supply isn't getting replenished, so it goes down and the prices necessarily skyrocket. Same thing with food. Now, I don't want to go off on a conspiratorial tangent here, but let's noodle this out. You saw in what's going on in certain food processing plants. Recently, there's an egg processing plant that just went up in flames for some reason. Now, a lot of these can be, I guess, debunked to say that just naturally happened. There was an electrical fire near a red can of oily rags and it went up in flames and the whole thing went burnt down. Or say this baby formula processing plant violated some arbitrary Fed rule and they got shut down, and then we have to, as a country, go to Germany and Australia to receive baby formula on C-17s. And no, we're not going to release it just yet. We need the FDA to go through all the pallets. So you see where this is going. They control the food right now, or the baby formula. They're not necessarily dumping it out in the market and driving the prices down. No. That would be too easy. No. It's all about control, folks. Believe you and me, it's control. And the more the government controls the means of production and the means of distribution, what do you think they're going to do when they want to take your weapons away, your firearms? Well, it's very easy. They would just manufacture some sort of crisis. Now, to say that a government would never do this, think about this back in I think it was the 1880s, when our government killed over 1.5 million buffalo to starve the Indians out. Why? Well, you see, they used it in the guise of, we need to keep the railroad tracks clear for commerce and commercial travel from to and from the east and west coast. And those pesky fucking buffalo get in the way. Well, the end result was that there's a lot of starvation in the Indian reservations. A lot. And to suggest that this would never fucking happen. The government loves us. Only has to think back to Waco and Ruby Ridge. Folks out there, do you really think the government loves us so much that they would just let us be and not get in our hair over you wanting to keep your scary, constitutionally protected Second Amendment? My friends out there in Lazoland, you're a bigger fool than I thought if you think the government won't try everything in their fucking power to reduce your liberties and fuck you any way they fucking can.